Well, Doug, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is so timely. I was just about to launch before we start hit record. I was going to launch into this whole thing about why it's so timely that we're talking. At the end of the year, everyone's starting to plan who they want to be next year, like what goals they have, and so I
Hmm.
think this is very timely, especially for people who are quitting drinking. Maybe people are just now starting to quit drinking, and really what they're doing is letting go of an old identity and stepping into a new one that is full of possibilities
So
of
true.
who they could actually be. So I think this is very timely. But to start, I like to play a fun little game called the lightning round, which is actually very slow. But we'll we'll front load the episode with some resources.
I'm the
Listen, you got
perfect guest if it's slow. So go ahead.
awesome. Well, listen, you got 37, you got sober 37 plus years ago. But I always like to ask people if there was a book that really helped them when they first got sober.
Uh, well, it was probably it was in a recovery book. It was a 12 and 12,
Mm.
12 steps, 12 traditions. At one of my first meetings, I won a big book. And of course, I really thought it was destiny that I won. I didn't know that they just had every newcomer win. Right.
Oh,
Seriously.
that's a
And
great meeting.
yeah, so I went home and I kind of read that because I couldn't sleep. I didn't know how to go to sleep. And
That
right,
puts
I'd
you
only
right
passed
out.
out. And
Right.
it just didn't resonate as much for me.
Yeah.
But then I got another book that was written later at a later time in the history of AA. And that book really laid it out for me. I'm a very 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of guy. Show me what to do, tell me what to do.
Step by
And
step, as they say.
absolutely. And so that book really made a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites as well, just because, you can read about steps in the list format, but there's no context or
Right.
perspective to it. So I did like the 12 and 12. Did a study group of that for many years. Um, do you have, listen, the name of the podcast is One Day at a Time, and it's like a mantra that I live by. Do you have one that has helped you over the years or maybe early on in recovery?
A mantra.
Like a quote, or we have a
Yeah.
lot of these little cliches that we say
Right.
in recovery circles.
Yeah. A couple of them, I think one of the things that really stuck with me very early on was allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. It
Hmm.
just, right, in just a couple words, really explained everything that had been going wrong in my life. And it also became something very simple. If I don't put any alcohol, and drugs is also a big part of my story. And if I don't put any substance into my body, I don't have that allergic reaction. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a big one.
Yeah, it's so funny looking at you today. I was like, oh, drugs, you look so respectable. But
Huge part of my story.
yeah,
And for like a lot of people, it just sped up my bottom.
for sure. Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. What's funny is years after I was sober, there was a guy who was painting, working on our house. I think we were painting the exterior of the fence or something. And we were standing out in front of the house, and I was holding this baby. I had a daycare at the time in my house, and I was holding a baby. And as we were discussing something, he dropped an F bomb, and he caught himself and he looked at me and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I turned around to see who he was talking to.
Right.
And it was in that moment I realized, I was like, oh, I've got like the soccer mom exterior. Like, you don't know who I am.
Right. Oh, no doubt. And that's so true in life, right? People don't know who you are,
Yeah,
whether you're clean and sober or deep into your alcoholism and addiction.
that's true. Some people wear their addiction more than others, I would
Mm.
say.
Yeah, some
But
people. A friend of mine drives it. I was like, "You have the most
yeah.
alcoholic car I've ever seen, right?"
Oh, is that right? Was he driving?
Oh, it's just like the muffler's falling off, and he's got dents and everything. And I was like, the cops just know you're a drunk driver.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you can read a book by its cover.
Uh,
Judge a book by its cover. That's funny. And I like to think of, listen, we're going to talk about your book called The Day Makes the Year, Makes a Life, Transform Your Work and Life with One Day Success. And this kind of goes right into this last line of questioning that I like to ask everybody about. What is your self-care practice routine? Is it daily? Is it weekly? I suspect yours might be daily, but how do you think of it?
Good guess. Right. Right. Yes. With a book about that's all about the day. Yeah. Look, I'm a person of routine, and what I found was that before I got clean and sober, my life was such chaos that
Mm,
the guys who helped me out early on knew I needed structure, and I really needed structure because each day was just a blur.
yeah.
And so I put a lot of structure in. And so, today it starts off with me um, with some morning journaling.
Mm,
I'm very big on journaling. I use an app called Day One. It's great on a Mac, and highly recommend it. And I just journal what I want to do, who I want to be, what do I want to do for the day, and that just kind of sets me up. And then I'm kind of a person who goes to bed at the same time and what have you. But
mhm.
it's really important, and we'll get into it in the book. But for me, my big kind of this little mantra, if you will, is I just want to be a better person than I was yesterday.
Oh,
I want to be a
yeah.
little bit sober, and I want to be a little bit better.
Mhm.
And so that's how I go into each day.
No, I love that. Yeah. I'm gonna have to ask you, when you wake up in the morning, who do you want to be? Like, who did you want to be today?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah. So what I want to be a person who gives to the world, doesn't take from the world. And more important is I kind of have this little standard is I want whoever interacts with me in the day to be better for it, not worse for it.
Mhm.
And look, I've been sober a long time, but I can still be self-centered and want things my way and get mad at other drivers and what have you. But just by having that in my head is like, are they better off? I just flipped them off. Of course not. Uh, and so that's really, what I want to be is just a better human being and a better contributor to society than the day before, and help as
Yeah.
many people as I can.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate, your admission of humanness. Like,
Mm.
after 37 years, still human, it's still important to have grace and self-compassion. But I really appreciate the constant the consciousness of I want to be better. I want people to leave me better than than when they found me. So
Yeah, look, there's no promise, just because you have a bunch of years that you're gonna stay sober, and you gotta work at it. And the one of the ways I also kind of live my life is I like to think I'm either at any given time I'm moving towards a drink and unhappiness, or I'm moving away from a drink and happiness. And it's
yeah,
a very conscious choice. So I always think of life as moments as kind of linear like that. And
yeah,
so I want to be very intentional in how I move away from unhappiness and move away from a drink.
yeah, I love that. So helpful. Um, I think that's it for the, I often sometimes I ask, what's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
Oh, wow. I'm probably go the other way, and I'm glad what I didn't know. Um,
Oh, what is that?
well, I think every good thing that's happened in my life is not. If you had asked me, "Is this what you want?" I probably wouldn't have chose it. And, yeah, like I used to
Like
like my brother.
alcoholism?
Yeah, well, or my brother had like kids, and right, he'd be going to the PTA, and I'd be like, "Oh, just shoot me!" Right? I don't want kids. I don't want to go to the PTA. And so if I had my choice, maybe I wouldn't. And I got three wonderful daughters. So all the good things have happened to me happened because of sometimes me not deciding what to do, but the
Yeah.
universe and God.
God, I was just talking to a friend who's kind of struggling. I think a lot of companies are struggling. There's a lot of layoffs and company
Mm,
changes, and she's in this job that's challenging, and it's getting worse and worse. And I'm like, maybe this is happening for you, not to you, because if things had been going status quo, you wouldn't have had enough motivation to think about leaving.
yeah,
So
when I first got sober, So it's back in 1987, and I met one of the guys in the group was a guy named by the name of Fred T, and he had 47 years then. So that was 70, almost 80 years ago. So he goes back to Bill and Bob and what have you. And
Jeez.
and he said something to me that I've carried my entire life is here was a guy who had been sober a long time, right? Almost 50 years, but his wife had an illness. His son he had a disabled son who lived in his house. The man just had so much going on. And one day he said to me, everything that's happened in my life has happened for the best. I just didn't always know it.
Yeah.
And boy, and I tell you, that was probably 3 weeks sober, 4 weeks sober. And,
Whoa.
and I grabbed onto that forever. So when things weren't happening the way I want, I couldn't always say, God, we trust, but man, I could always, and Fred, we trust.
Yeah.
Because he lived
Yeah.
it. He showed it to me.
Yeah. I mean, early on, my concept of a higher power was, God was working in my life through people,
Mhm.
right? Like that I could understand. And so that makes a lot of sense to me that this amazing guy, Fred, gave you a bit of wisdom. In the beginning when you're just like cracked open, it's
Right.
yeah, the things that we absorb. It's amazing. Those are good ones. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. You got sober the year I graduated high school, so that's awesome. Now I realize I'm 37 years out of high school. Um, but what was life like? How did give me the quick, like what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in my parents were divorced when I was young. Had a little bit of a confusing life. My father was all about his career and making money, and at the same time, I lived with my mother and two older brothers, and we lived in probably lower middle class. So I had a little bit of this confusion of lives, who I was, and so with having older brothers, and then my mother worked nights. uh, I started really drinking at a very early age, probably 11, 12.
Wow.
They were drinking at the house. And, somewhere along the line, I figured out, or at least I thought I had to figure it out, I could either work hard or just try to be funny in something. And so I became kind of the class clown, if you will. But as I got deeper and deeper kind of into drinking, so I was in school in the 70s, and I was high at school every day. And I just didn't take anything serious. My priorities was always just to get high. And I made it through high school, went to college, and in college, it's when my drinking really took off, like a lot of people. And so I was my sophomore year, I was barely hanging on. And I like to always say I was drinking full time, I was working full time, and I was going to school full time. So something had to give. So of course it was school. And so I dropped out. I still can remember, God bless my mother, me telling her, and she just had such great hopes for me. And I can still, so many years, remember that just broke her heart. So thank God I had some success that she could see
Yeah.
before she passed away. And but I ended up, my father had a marina down in Florida. I went down there, and this was in the late 70s. Ended up moving back and forth once, but it was just all of a sudden it was kind of like Jimmy Buffett was hot, and the music was going, the beach, and the drinking and drugs were flowing, and I just went all in on that lifestyle. And I mean, one of the things I look back is a lot of people who drank and drugged in high school and college, they outgrew it. But I never outgrew it. I just had to go to motels after everybody else went home. And so my life just really just got completely out of control. And I had a terrible cocaine habit. And but my father had sold the marina, and we were partners in this marine supply store. And I had this this is again in South Florida in the 80s. And I had this
Ugh,
great gig.
that was the Miami Vice era.
Exactly. Exactly. I had this great gig going. The drug runners would come in to get marine supplies. I'd trade them for the drugs, or at least I had access to it. And so
Right.
I started stealing from the business to support a drug habit.
No.
And so my father couldn't figure out why we were busy, but we're losing a lot of money. And I knew the gig was up. And so, like any good alcoholic addict, what are you going to do? You run away.
Yeah.
You think people run away when they're 9 years old. I'm 28 years old and I'm going to run away to Hawaii because it's nicer than Florida. And so anyway, my father figures it out, wants to have a meeting with me. I drink all night over a Super Bowl party, take off, and go to the airport in a blackout, buy a one-way ticket. And I end up getting on a plane and not even remembering it. And it's in the book because it was really that last bottom is I woke up on an airplane in a center seat landing in an airport and had no idea how I'd gotten there.
Oh my God.
And I just kind of knew the gig was up. And I'd hit a lot of bottoms, of course, before that. I had a DWI, but that was just bad luck.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw on the news they were out looking for drunk drivers, and I tried to do a U-turn, and there was a cop, and then it flashed before me. So of course I cut across 3 lanes of traffic. So he's just like, you're an idiot.
You deserve a DWI.
I really did deserve a DWI. And that's where I woke up on that airplane. I hit my bottom, and I had to go back and face the consequences and face what I had done to my family.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you get to, I know we're not going to talk about any specific 12-step program, but how did you get help? How did you come to the place where you were like, okay, I'm going to try to go get help?
Yeah. So I waited a few days in Texas and flew back and had to meet with my father. And so I kind of had this plan. I just told him the drugs were the real problem. And I was going to quit drinking for a year, just kind of figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
was never going to quit smoking pot. And so he insisted that I go see a friend of his daughter was going to see this therapist. So he insisted I go to this therapist. And so I go to this therapist. And it's a great story because he's talking to me. He goes, hey, so I have this theory. I have a theory that alcoholics are really just warriors from the past.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, and they
Feeding your
drink because
ego.
they drink because there's no battle left to fight. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to hypnotize you and talk to that warrior. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
Oh, he said no? I'd be all in. I'm like, there's a wire in me you can talk to?
Yeah, he was just like, it was like so crazy.
So you're like,
But
no.
I said, no, thanks. But he said, well, then you need to go to recovery. And one of the things is, I'm not sure I ever would have went if it hadn't been for him. Now, I think he was half-ass crazy, and I turned him down what he wanted. But boy, you just never know where that lifeline, that life ring is thrown. And that's how I ended up going into recovery.
So you went to a 12-step meeting and did the whole program and got the sponsor and worked all the steps.
I went all in.
Yeah.
And and part of it, and I had some tough guys around me. One of them said, look, he goes, this is pretty simple. Just don't drink and change everything about yourself. And and excuse me. And I found that kind of appealing. Because I didn't like who I'd become.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, when I had a very similar experience. And I went to my first meeting and they were like, all you have to change is everything. And I was like, sign me up. There is nothing I want left. And listen, I didn't actually realize I had some character assets. Like I didn't know, I wasn't in touch with that. All I could see was all of the things I was doing wrong and how much I hated myself. I was like, I'll be anybody else but me. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, we're very similar in that way. That just tell me what to do. I'll follow what you tell me. And and I had some really good guys. And there was one where I'd start to meet with this with my sponsor Brian, and we'd meet on Monday night. And I'm kind of hitting that place early on where, gosh, you just don't want this life. I mean, you don't want the chaos you were in, but
Yeah,
but I'm in my 20s. I don't want to stop drinking. I
I
mean,
know.
I
Yeah.
can't go to the parties and do all the stuff. And he would say, let's meet for dinner. And we met, and most of you probably listening are too young for this. We'd meet at the Kmart cafeteria for
Oh
dinner.
my God. That is hilarious.
And I remember just thinking, this is my life. Shoot me. Right? It's all the
doesn't
old
get
ladies in South Florida, Kmart, me and Brian.
doesn't
And
get any worse than that. The blue light special.
exactly. And there is an important message, I think, for listeners is,
Mm.
when I finally gave up the alcohol and the drugs, my life actually got worse for a while, not better.
Well, yeah. I mean, they say that when you get sober, you will feel better. You will feel the sadness better. You will
Mm,
feel the anxiety better. It's like, yeah, I was like a giant raw nerve ending in the beginning. Like I felt everything, but that's just a temporary
yeah.
period.
I mean, what I found is I had to lose some things, and most of it was just because of the wreckage that I'd created.
Yeah.
And right. And then so as I was able to finally kind of clear that wreckage and clear my mind, I could start to see that I could live a day without drinking and drugs. And I never would have imagined that. Never. I mean, I blacked out
Yeah.
probably 355 days a year.
Wow. So you were
Yeah, I mean,
using,
I was a nightly blackout.
yeah, nightly drinker. Brutal. I mean, I got sober young too, and it's just a hard life. That whole trying to keep up appearances and trying to keep up the lies. And it just like the chaos, like you were saying, you were living a life of chaos. It's a hard place to be.
Well, one of the funny things is I owned a boat because I was in the boating business. And within like a couple of weeks of going into recovery, I sold my boat because I was positive you couldn't boat sober. So I got rid of my boat.
You got rid of the boat.
Yeah,
Damn it.
honestly.
You
Yeah,
maybe would
it's
tell
just
you go back and tell your newly sober self not to sell the boat.
yeah, I'm sure I sold at a loss. And yeah, but I'd been my life boating and drinking and drugging and
Yeah.
beach volleyball on a sandbar and
Oh yeah.
running to the Bahamas, just all this craziness.
Yes, ladies. Bottles, bags, and blue jeans is what I used to call it.
Mm, that's a great song. It'd be a great country song.
Yeah, I think it's the title of my next book.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing that part. I feel like the 12-step experience is a worthy endeavor. And there's lots of other recovery modalities that we can implement too. But
So true.
I really wanted to talk to you about your book because that beginning part of recovery, when you're letting go of the person that you used to be, like I couldn't be the party girl anymore, you couldn't be the party guy, you couldn't be the boating guy. It's like I'm sure you had to be like, this was a period of reinvention. It's like, well, who, now that I'm not those things, what am I going to be? Right. And I feel like that is the case for a lot of people who are newly sober. It's like they're
Mm,
coming to grips with this person that they have been, that they don't want to be anymore, and they have to start deciding who it is that they want to be, and like what kind of dreams and hopes that you can have. Like what do you want to accomplish with your life? Like suddenly, like when you get sober, you actually have all these, like the world is your oyster. It's actually, you suddenly have all these opportunities. So once we kind of get a handle, I think, on the fact that we have to clean up some wreckage and we have to do some work, the idea of who do you want to be now is such an important question. So for people who are like in that place of reinventing themselves, this is a great book. The Day Makes the Year Makes a Life.
thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. So how do we start thinking of who are we now, who do we want to be, and how do we get there?
Yeah, for me, I think that just the biggest part is that acceptance of this
Mm-hmm.
past life that you were living and the things that you have done. Uh, one of the things in the book that is probably I am most passionate about is about how we just have to own our past. And
Yeah.
there's 6 principles, and it's the second principle. But I the only way I knew to do it was just to keep living forward. One
Yeah.
day right? Try to move forward. I was very blessed as I'd really hurt my father and his wife financially, but they were very forgiving, which kind of made it easy. But I had a lot of regret and remorse. And, I think it's a lot of that regret and remorse and resentment too can really hold people back into that who they were. And,
Yeah.
I kind of know, and I think if for people who are listening, just, you so become like, you don't even know who you are when you're drinking and drugging, right? Because
Yeah.
right, your morals, everything goes out the window, and all you care, you become so extremely self-centered.
Hmm.
And right, so all I know is to get away from that person. It kept taking a step, one day, one day, one day. And that's really kind of what the essence of this book is. That, each day is a day to be better than you were the day before. And and it can happen in recovery, if you put the drink down. And I'm like you, I don't believe 12 steps the only way. I believe there's a lot of different ways
Hmm.
for recovery. I know what's worked for me, but
Hmm.
I would never think this is my way's the only way. But
Did you ever do anything else like therapy or anything else like that?
yeah, they were fairly disastrous, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so um I tried some, and yeah, this again was back in the late 80s. Codependency was really a hot
Oh, that's a
topic.
big one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a real problem with the therapist I was working with. We did it in group, and she seemed to blame my parents for everything.
Mm.
And and wherever she'd refer to parents, she'd call them the dynamic duo. And
Ugh.
but again, this really helped me because it actually allowed me to say, I don't agree with her. It's every action I did, it was my choice.
Hmm.
And I'm a big believer, my parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
And but so my therapy didn't necessarily work out. But the one thing I've never did was ever quit going to meetings, because my mind needs to be just grounded in recovery, and I stay close to a lot of people
Hmm.
in recovery. That's really important to me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So I want to kind of go through the book because you talk about you have it broken up in sections that are very easy to digest. So we talk about the day, taking responsibility, intentional actions, create intentional results. I love that. I'm a sales girl I was in tech sales for 10 years. And the
Okay.
thing that always rattles in my brain is the VPs would be like, do the revenue generating activities, like what are your your revenue
Right.
and so whether that revenue is like a financial goal or an emotional goal, or there's always a direct correlation between cause and effect, which is
Absolutely.
very super pragmatic. So I love that. You talk about practice relentless simplicity, which is amazing because we do tend to overcomplicate things. Improve 3 things daily, and give to get. So let's just start at the beginning. So the day success practices. So how do you like to think of how you set the day? We talked a little bit about it earlier, but what is your guidance in this book?
Yeah. It's the I've met a lot of people, both in recovery and in business, and and this book is based on principles of recovery that I've really interpreted, so anyone can use, whether you're just in work, and if you even have no drinking issues or what have you, or if you do. I mean, again, I tried to interpret the ones that really mattered to me, and one of the things that I would see is a lot of people wanted so much in life, but they weren't doing what they needed to do in the day to make it happen. And
Mhm.
so when I talk about the day, as I say, it's everything you want in the future is in the day,
Mhm.
right? The future, a little cliche, right? Never happens. But if I want to get a new job, it's what I do today to go get another job, right? It's the actions that I take. And that's really important because, you know, thinking about something is not doing something.
Yeah.
And
Live
a
your way
lot of
into right thinking, as they
right.
say.
Yes, right. Act your way in the new way of thinking. Right. So it's all about actions,
Hmm.
but it's what you do in the day. And so, if I want to, I'm a little under the weather today, but what I want to accomplish today, I still went into the day planning to do some things that I believe will make a better future for myself and my family, because it's all about what I do in the day.
Yeah, I love that. I once heard somebody talk about how we are actually living in the residual of all of yesterday's decisions, like from the desk that I chose, the way I wear my hair, the shirt I picked out. These were all decisions I made in the past, and I'm living in the residual of that. So it does make sense
Good.
that the actions that we take today. And what I love about the law of cause and effect is that it's impersonal. Right? It doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person. If you're starting out in your recovery and you feel like a shitty person, that's okay, because you can still take actions that will help you gain positive results in the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was really who I was. I'd become a shitty person and felt like shit. And
Yeah.
so, right, the only way I could get out of that was to not be that person in the day.
Yeah. I love that idea of contrary action that we hear a lot about.
Mm,
It's do the opposite of what you feel like doing.
it's a great Seinfeld episode too.
Is it really?
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go
I
back and
think
watch that.
it's George, I figured it out. Whatever I think I should do, I will do the opposite.
Yeah. That's a great one. Well, definitely in the beginning, that is a
Oh,
great
so true.
that is a
So
great.
true.
Yeah, I like that. I like the beginning questions that you have, if as we're setting the stage, it's like, who am I? Who do I want to be? And what types of experiences do I want to have? And I think, especially as, we're coming to the end of the year, we're starting to think, I think people naturally start thinking about, what do I want out of this next year? I think those are the fundamental questions to ask, is who do I want to be, and what kind of experiences do I want to have? What I want to contribute.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it like kind of like a trip. If I live outside Boston, and if I want to go to Chicago, right? So I can fly there, I can take a train, I can drive, I could hitchhike, although you don't really see much hitchhikers anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Don't do
there's right.
that.
But there's all these ways to go to Chicago. So
Yeah.
first I got to kind of know where I want to go.
Yeah.
And also know that sometimes you may never make it to Chicago. You may get nudged somewhere else and you're supposed to follow some other way. But
Mm,
but if I'm in a situation and it's not working for me, whether it's a job, a relationship, whatever you want, it's about what am I going to do to make that change. And again, it has to happen with actions, and it has to happen in the day.
yeah, no, that's really good. And then the second part, we already kind of talked about taking responsibility. But I like this introductory part that you have here about emotion and motion leveraging reactions for one day success. Tell me a little bit more about that.
That look at that I think that it's the motions that we make on a daily basis. It's the things that we do. And I want to go one back on the taking responsibility. Probably the most important thing that I share, I think, is the idea that is you can't change what you don't own.
Mm,
You
yeah.
can't change what you don't own. And it kind of goes through all these elements. But if I don't like who I was, I have to own it to be able to change it. If I don't like, what I'm doing in a career, I can own it that I have the power to change it. And the world's not out to get me and conspire against me. I'm just not
Right.
that important. Um, but I like to call the taking responsibility is kind of like a superpower. You can wear a cape or not, but it it's huge, and it's so. And I'm often asked, what's it look like? What does taking like? And I think it's right. I don't blame anyone for anything that's happening to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, yeah, early on in my recovery, I went to this group and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to give up blame, because
Mm,
somehow I realized that, I was a complainer, and
mm,
I was in total victim mentality. All I could see is how other people did me wrong. And, I didn't realize, taking responsibility. I didn't realize I was attempting to take responsibility. But someone said it's the ability to respond. Like challenging things are going to happen. But if I own it, like you were saying, then I could respond in a way that was empowering as opposed to having that victim mentality.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we don't talk enough about is how our reactions affect us.
Ooh,
Right.
yeah,
So, and look, and there are victims, and bad things happen to people.
for sure. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's what I'm going to do as a result. If I'm driving and someone rear ends me and I have not hit the brakes, it's not my fault. Right. But it's what I do next. Right. Is it going to ruin my day, going to ruin my week, and show that the world is out to get to me? Or am I just going to call my insurance company and take care of it so I can go on with my life? And so reactions are huge. And
Reactions
I
are
know when my
huge.
reactions are right, my spirituality and my thoughts are right.
Yeah, maybe I should take a little. I was just looking at the book and it said the power of pause. And I was thinking, oh, maybe we should pause a little bit and talk about how you understand your higher power, because that's a huge, I mean, that's the whole point of the 12-step program, is to give you access to a higher power. So what does that look like for you today?
So interesting that so I came out of a family of my grandfather was in the Midwest, and he was a fire and brimstone preacher. He was that guy
Oh,
traveling the circuits in the Midwest,
wow.
pounding on the pulpit and saving lives and bringing people to Jesus, and God bless him. Uh, so I had a lot of religion
Mm.
and really just and lost it. And so when we get into this recovery, I kind of knew that if I wasn't careful, that God stuff would trip me up, and I didn't want that to happen. Now, one of the things my sponsor said to me, he goes, "Don't worry about it." He goes, "See that doorknob?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "That doorknob can run your life better than you."
Such
And
a weird thing to say to someone.
and I couldn't argue it, because my life had been such a disaster. It's like, yeah, the doorknob wouldn't have stole the money. Uh, and so, and so I didn't make a doorknob my God, my
Okay.
higher power.
Yeah.
But what I needed to do was just to keep moving and not let it trip me up. And
Mm,
so I just say it's God as I don't understand him.
okay.
I just don't even try to wrap my head around it. I know there's something out there. I know there's a something. They told me to fake it till I make it, and I'm not sure I ever made it. But I never let it stop me. And
Uh,
so, I'll talk to God, but I have a tendency to talk to my father who passed away. I'll talk to him maybe a little bit more, and maybe he can pass
mm-hmm,
something on to God.
mm-hmm.
But and I know it's not about recovery, but this, don't let the God stuff throw you off. It's it's a part of the program, but it's the part
Yeah.
you get to define, not anyone else.
I thank you so much for saying that. I mean, I feel like for a lot of people, that's one of the things that keeps them out, is this whole, higher power God concept, because the word
Absolutely.
God is actually in the steps several times. And so, thank you for saying that
I
you
know.
don't have to understand it. You don't even have to interact with it really. Some people interact with it more than others, but it doesn't have to be a reason to keep you out. Like the steps are still a worthy endeavor.
My dear friend, one of my best friends, is he's extremely religious, and I always joke and say, I'm just not willing to put the work in you do. Right. He puts the work in, and just kind of a quick history lesson, right, is, right, AA came out of the Oxford group.
Yes,
And
they
in the
did.
Oxford group, right, if you didn't believe in their God, you couldn't be part of it.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
somewhere along, they just realized that
Yeah.
we alcoholics, that wasn't going to work for it. So you said
Yeah.
it. Don't let it get in your way. Just, be good orderly direction or whatever
Yeah,
it can
right.
be,
Yeah.
or a doorknob even.
Or the doorknob. Yeah. I had a lot of religious trauma. I had a cousin or someone who did all our genealogy stuff, and there was like 400 years of ministers in our family. And I was like,
Oh, look.
man, they must have been turning over
Right.
when they came to me. Because and that was one of the things that I was really worried about. And I
Mm,
had a gal tell me, she goes, you can just make a list of all the things you want it to be and all the things that you don't want it to be. And I gave her my list and she tore it in half and she gave me the side that was like, okay, well then this is
Oh, I
what
love
it
that.
is. Yeah. It was like energy, love, connection, stuff like that. So that's kind of what it is to this day. I still feel like it's something bigger that I don't understand, but I
Yeah,
broke
and look, and I don't believe as humans we can't understand, right? It's just we can. I don't know what's out there,
yeah.
but also, but if I go to the ocean and I see the mountains and I see all these things that yeah, there's something divine, something, but not for me to figure out, and I don't let it get in my way.
Yeah. Let's keep it moving.
Right.
Keep moving forward, like you said. I love that. Let's see. So, and you were talking about successfully failing forward. There's a lot of people who are just like so afraid to fail or be humiliated. How do you think of failure?
Yeah, look, I think that failure is and again, it's about moving forward.
Mhm.
Um, like most people's failures is really just not a failure at all, right? It's just we made a mistake, right? And so, you know, and you can rarely does like a failure at work ever really get you fired, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just so it maybe takes a little hit to the ego, but
Hmm.
I had someone a little while back who really was just all in that they'd done something wrong at work and it was going to cost them their career. And so I coached them to just go to the boss and just tell them what you learned from it.
Hmm.
And the boss was just so impressed. And I said, make sure you tell them what you learned. And most important is tell them what you're going to do differently as a result.
Yeah.
And, and so if you can take away, I mean, look, every person who's put down drinks and drugs has had incredible failure in our life.
Yeah.
And it only defines us if we allow it to.
If we allow it to. Yeah. And I think
But
it's the lesson that we take away from it, right? Like even in my drinking and drugging experience that where I hurt somebody else or I lost money, like that's a big failure in my
right,
or got fired from a job. I would say that those experiences actually led me to somewhere better. Like hurting somebody else made me a little more sensitive to ever doing that again. Like the pain burns you a little bit and then you don't do that the next time you're tempted to like overreact or be self-centered or whatever. And even if you lose a job, oftentimes you get something better that fits you better. It's
absolutely.
just like the letting go part is the hard part.
Yeah. And not get allowing yourself to get in kind of that failure loop, right? That you just start, it's about, I used to always tell people that if I lost my job, I should be worried about where my money's coming from, but I
Hmm.
could never allow it to lose my identity. It should
Oh
never be
yeah.
my identity. And so I think what happens is when we start worrying, people I think who are really fearful of failure are really worried about what people think of them.
Uh-huh.
Um, I recently had Insider, Business Insider run an excerpt for the book, which was really a cool moment. And
Super cool.
yeah,
Congratulations.
and and had some nice book sales and got some really nice messages from people. But I
Yeah.
got like one hater message, right? Who just sent me the nastiest message, right? And there's probably could have been a time in my life where, I would have focused on him.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's his feelings. He
Yeah.
doesn't define me.
No, absolutely not. And I kind of hang on to this, publishing podcasts and, creating content myself, you're kind of sensitive to outward criticism. But I keep this note on my desk that what we reflect on others is what we really feel about
Mm,
ourselves, right? So that when somebody is exhibiting a lot of negativity, it really has nothing to do with me. It's like they see something in me that they hate about themselves, and what I have come to understand is that what's needed is some self, like, I think, oh, that person really needs some self compassion. It really has nothing. They used to say that in the rooms too when I first got sober is it's none of my business what people think about me. And I thought that
absolutely.
was the craziest thing I ever heard. Of course it's about me. It's me they're talking about. And she was like, no, people are just like mirrors. You can't love or hate something about somebody unless it's something you love or hate about yourself.
Yeah, and I remember I first time like when I had a big resentment at somebody and was really mad at him, right? So the first thing guy said to me was, "Yeah, well, I'm sure he slept fine last night," and and that annoyed me. And he was
Yeah,
right.
that is
Uh,
annoying.
but then he goes, pray for him, pray for him,
Ah, the angry
and I
man's prayer.
realized I'd rather not waste my prayer on somebody so I'm going to let it go.
So you'd rather just let it go.
I'd rather let it go, but for someone, again, who's takes the time to send a hater message,
Yeah.
I pray for them that maybe they'll find the peace they're looking for.
Yeah,
And
for
they
sure.
didn't find
Yeah,
it for me.
ultimately. Yeah. No, I love that. There's something I think it was so interesting about they call it the angry man's prayers, that when we're praying for somebody that we're resentful at, like I remember a gal at work who was exhibiting all the things that I don't like in a person's character,
Mm.
being a bully or critical or intimidating. And they say that, it's like if you spot it, you got it. And I was like, oh, so where am I holding those same characteristics? And then I was thinking about it. And I could think in my past of when I've demonstrated those
Mm.
character flaws, let's say. And then I came to realize I was doing it out of my own insecurities and fears. And I was able to find compassion. And so when I'm praying for somebody that I'm angry about, I'm gaining compassion for
Mm.
my own character defects, as it were. And so as I get compassion for others, I can give it to myself, and it kind of smooths out the rough edges. So that's kind of
Love that. Love that.
how that works for me. Okay, so the next part of your book is intentional actions create intentional results. And um, you do talk about procrastination. It says, or why it took me a long time to write
Right.
this chapter.
Right.
You're so funny. Let's talk a little bit about procrastination. Like, why do we procrastinate and how can we get over it?
Yeah, I like to I like to compare it to a pile of dirty laundry, and right, the looking at the laundry to me is worse than actually doing the laundry. And right, you swear it starts talking to you and taunting you, and look at me, I'm growing, and
Yeah.
so I think procrastination, right? It's it can be from fear, right, that we're not going to be good enough or what have you. And look, I think, and I think especially for people for work is, we have a tendency to procrastinate the things we don't like to do, and so I'm really big on like little tools, kind of like a time block, like
Oh,
block
yeah.
out 30 minutes every day and just do whatever you don't want to do. Just get it done, get it out of your mind, free up your mind. And but most of the time I think procrastination again is some kind of fear in our way, and I think you just need to identify what it is. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think, and perfectionism really definitely comes into there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. We don't want to look bad.
yeah, yeah. And look, with AI tools and everything else, no matter what you're doing, there's not that hard to, right? There's so many tools out there nowadays to help you be a little bit
Oh,
better.
okay. So okay. So tools for, it's like getting help, finding easier ways to do things. I love the time block, 30 minutes. Sometimes it sounds like a lot to me. So sometimes I'll do 5 minutes.
Mm.
I'll just be like, you know what? If I can just show up for 5 minutes, it's show up and let it be ugly. Like I use that towards the
Right.
gym. Like I
All
could
right. That's a good one.
I started a yoga practice in July, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to show up, and it's just going to be ugly for a little while.
Yeah.
And
Keep
showing
going.
up
You'll be
is
better.
showing up is the win. So, but
Yeah, look,
I like the
and the
tools.
other thing I recommend to people is, look, so whether it's procrastination and all that, right? So that's just so much going on in your head and so much, and so I always just tell people, look, the best thing is just rat yourself out, right? Just tell a friend how you're feeling, and text them, call them, and just say, yeah, I'm just not feeling good about myself. It's amazing what that can do,
It really
and
does take the power out of it.
it really does. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think that's a good way to put it, right? It's you've given something more power than it deserves.
right. Yeah. And I like the laundry analogy because sometimes just doing the thing is so much easier than not doing it. Like all the
Right.
Like, in the time it took me to avoid it, I could have done it 10 times already.
Yeah. One other tool that's big for me is streaks. So like I wrote this book in like 63 days and,
What?
and only because, the first book I was 20 years ago. So I knew I couldn't wait 20 more years. Right. So for me, it's like streaks, like, I'm going to do something today. I'm going to do something tomorrow.
Ah,
And then I put it in my journal and, and once I'm like 6 out of 6 days, I don't want to break the streak. And it's such a
oh,
simple little thing to do, but it's a great way to help yourself improve.
yeah. It reminds me of momentum. Like you build
Mm.
momentum and just keep that momentum going. I heard, I'm sure you've heard of James Clear's book,
Oh,
Atomic
yes.
Habits. Yeah, he says it's better, like if you have a goal of going to the gym, but you don't have a lot of time, it's better to show up for 10 minutes than to skip the habit altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Building momentum. That's awesome. And we just have a couple of more things. So we do have practice relentless simplicity, improve 3 things daily, and give to get. What do you, in the few minutes that we have, what are the important things we need to know about practicing relentless
Yeah.
simplicity?
So, we humans, right? We're very complex.
Mhm.
Usually the things we're focused on is not. And, and so usually there's one or two things that really matter. And more often than not, like backstories, everything get in our way. And, and like one of the best management tips I give someone is if you have employees, and you can do it with your children too, is just come tell me what you want to do. I'll tell you if I need more information, because all the backstory and all the information you give me, most of the time, it just gets in the way.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really just true in simplicity. So if your understanding is, if you have a website that's just not getting the traffic, yeah, you could draw the whole thing out and have 47 different lines of traffic and why. Chances are there's probably just one or two things. Just try to identify what those one or two things are. And in the book, I give some nice practices of how to walk something back from walk it forward or walk it back on the
Mhm.
steps of why, and really just getting to root causes.
Well, listen, there it is, right? Get to the root cause, and that does keep it simple. Just tell me what you want.
Yeah.
Just
And do it with ourselves. Yeah.
yeah,
So what
do
do
it
you
with
want? I want
ourselves.
this. So go do it.
Yeah, I could
I
do.
mean, it really, that
Yeah.
is relentless simplicity.
Yeah, let go of the backstory. Improve 3 things daily. That's probably what do I need to know about that? You have
Yeah. So
knowledge,
you actually
skills, and
mentioned
behaviors.
James Clear, who obviously has just been incredibly successful and really helped a lot of people.
Mhm.
Uh, and he talked in his book about, being 1% better.
Mhm.
And I've actually had heard that from others too,
Yeah, it's
about
not a
this
new
1%.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And but I don't know what 1% looks like. I need something
Mm.
more practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because oh, I just did something, is that a 0.5%, 1/4%? Did I just get my 1%? So I get it down to the basics of just improve 3 things a day. And I learned it when I was a store manager for the Sharper Image in Florida, where a manager taught me how to look at this store and see how to make it better every day. And
Mm.
most of the time, I don't always know at the start of the day what my improve 3 things are. Sometimes I have one, but
Mm.
by the end of the day, I want to know I'm going to find 3 things to improve. And and so if you do that, think about it. You're in a year, you're 1,095 times better than you were. I mean, that's huge. It
That
doesn't
is
have to
huge.
be big. Look, most of our progress in life are really small incremental. But
Yeah,
when we
it's
build on
true.
it day after day, right? We always think everybody else is having these earth-shattering moments, and
Yeah.
all I'm doing is just trying to, again, make things better, trying to be a better person.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing I do in there that I like to share with people is every morning in my phone pops up a reminder for me to do 5 good things a day every morning. And so that's one of the ways I know that I can be a better person than I was yesterday.
Wow.
So like
Mm-hmm.
I take my girlfriend coffee every morning, and every now and then she'll joke, "What?" Right. So I've just knocked my first one out.
Yeah.
And she loves the improve for 5 things a day.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
do 5 good things a day. But it
Sure,
really,
sure.
those are the little types of tools, which are not only in the book, but it's really how I've lived my life. I'm a
Yeah.
pretty simple guy, but I need that kind of structure
Yeah.
to live.
No, I feel like that's super pragmatic, very practical. Like, even if, and when you're talking about the store example, like you might not know at the beginning of the day what the three things are, and you kind of discover what they are throughout the day. I mean, those could be, if you run out of time during the day, those could be your three things the next day.
Yep.
That makes a
Yep.
lot of sense to me. Yeah. And no matter what you're doing.
And the very last one is just give to get. And I think it's the essence of of sobriety and the essence of life,
Hmm.
that, when we give to others, we get so much more in return.
Yeah.
But I have to be cautious, and this is what I really learned early in recovery is my thoughts. My thoughts don't change anything. It's my actions, right?
Right.
So I don't want to, if I think good thoughts of someone, I got to tell them. They
Yeah.
don't know it unless I tell them,
Exactly.
right? And so I just think the more you help others, the more you help yourself, and I think
Yeah.
it's the essence of recovery. And another thing I'd have to say is all of us needed some help sometime too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I love the
Take
idea
it.
of service. It's really, for me, it was like the fastest way to rebuild my self-esteem after addiction. My
Mm,
self-esteem took a huge hit. I mean, over and over and over again. And when I, started practicing this idea of service, it's hard to look into the eyes of gratitude and feel bad about who you are, right? It's a very important exercise, I think, to sort of bolster that identity that we're trying to create. Like, we deserve actually to take the actions that will benefit us and others.
yeah, and to your point, it does benefit us. Look, I do believe that it comes full circle. If anything, I feel better about myself, or if I
Hmm.
help someone not drink today, then I won't drink today either. Or,
Yeah,
and it's true and professionally. And it's just, I think, a good way to live.
it absolutely is. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today. This is such a practical book. I am a practical science girl,
Well,
very
thank you.
cause and effect, root cause. I really appreciate it. If people are interested in learning more about you or finding out ways how you help others, where can people find you?
Yes, so you can go to my website, dougfleener.com, DOUGFLEENER.com. Books available. You can buy it on the website. It's also available to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Um, makes I think it's a terrific gift to give someone for the first of the year, and
Yeah,
help somebody start their year off strong.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all your work, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye.